Hi and welcome to this week's lab. I'm Tony and I'm the Head Marketologist here at MyMarketology. In this week's lab, I'll be showing you how to quickly and easily create animated adverts that you can use for your display network and remarketing advertising, all for free using Google's Web Designer. Now, although you need a creative streak to some degree, this approach will help anyone who wants to create animated adverts but who doesn't have the budget to use the usual animation and graphic design products such as Photoshop and After Effects. So Google Web Designer is free. You can find it at this link, which is google.com/webdesigner. You do need to download it, but don't worry, it doesn't take too long. It's not that big a file. You can then go and open it to get started, and we'll take you through the process. So this is what you're met with when you log in, and obviously you're asked to create a file or open previous files that you've created as well. There are some templates you can use and some help documentation as well. So if we look at the templates just quickly, this is a gallery of templates you can use. To be honest, when you're looking at creating for the Google Display Network and your AdWords ads, there are only two options that you can use here, and that's the banner or the dynamic remarketing for AdWords. And the reason that is, if you want to find out more, you can click on the buttons, but it'll tell you here the platforms that the different formats and templates can be used in. So banners can be used in AdMob, AdWords, and double-click. But if we just click on, say, demonstration, you'll see that this changes, and the platforms that you can use it in is only double-click. Say the YouTube masthead, again, that's only available to use through double-click. Now, double-click and the other types of ads here are all sort of under the bracket of programmatic advertising, which is quite a bit more involved than just your usual AdWords advertising and Google Display Network advertising. It's not really relevant to us for this tutorial, although we do have previous videos that we've done on programmatic advertising if you're interested in learning more. So if we just go back, then you choose your option basically. So if you're using a template, you can do that. For the purposes of this, we're going to create a new file. And again, we've got a few options here. There's a different types of ads we can use. So we've got banner, which is the one we're going to use for this tutorial, but you can also choose expandable or interstitial adverts as well. If you want to learn more about those, a quick search engine search will give you absolutely millions of different blog posts and videos to tell you the difference between those. For our purposes though, it's just going to be a basic banner. And then you can also choose whether it's a HTML file, HTML with pages, or just CSS or JavaScript or XML. For our purposes, we don't need to change anything. We're creating a banner advert. So we give it a name, first of all. So for this, we'll call it the MyMarketology Lab Test Animated Ad. Use your usual naming conventions there though. We then choose where we're going to save it, and the environment is where we need to choose AdWords. Again, we're creating an AdWords ad here for the Google Display Network for our remarketing through AdWords. If you do use the programmatic options or it's non-Google ad, you can choose those from here as well. We then choose the sizes. So at the moment we're going to stick with the 300 by 250, which is the most common size for retargeting ads and the display ads, but you can choose from the other usual sizes there and also customize one to your own sizes as well. You can choose responsive layout if you wish, or you can keep that unticked. Again, it depends. This type of ad is going to render absolutely fine on mobile devices, so we don't need it to be responsive. If you were creating maybe one of the sort of large banners, maybe the 728 by 90, then obviously you'd maybe consider responsive layout for mobile as well. And you can choose animation mode, whether it's quick or advanced. For our purposes, we're going to leave it on advanced. So that's the file created, and it now takes us through to the drag and drop builder. It does look quite complicated. There are a lot of options pretty much all over the page here. You don't need to use them all though to create ads. These are there literally for pretty much every purpose you could ever dream of, and some that you'd never even think of using. So don't worry about all the buttons that you see. I'll show you the ones that you need to use. But if you are wondering what anything is, just hover over it and it'll tell you exactly what that tool is. So you can hover over, use default positioning, use default sizing. You can use the alignment options. And again, these options changed based on what you're actually editing in the builder itself. So we're actually into the section now where we're going to start creating this ad, and this is where your creative streak needs to come to the fore really. Now there's one sort of, not necessarily a downside to using this platform, but creating any form of animated ad, you need to have an idea of what it's going to look like when the animations and all the fancy stuff finishes. So you need sort of a static image, an end state for the advert. For the purposes of this tutorial, I've actually created an advert and just saved a screenshot of the static image that it looks like at the end. So as I say, this is static, but this is going to be animated. So the unicorn and the sun are going to zoom upwards. The logo itself for this fictional company is going to sort of come in from, it's going to move up the screen and then turn from transparent into the final image there. These little bits of text are going to come in from the side to add a little bit of sort of depth to it there, and then the buy now button's going to move in, and then that's going to be clickable on the advert as well. So it's not going to look just like a flat image, it's going to come in with some animations as well. But what we need to do is actually create the advert in the builder to look like this, and then it's a straightforward job of adding the animations in. So to create this, what you need to do is actually create separate layers for each of these images. So we've got a background image that'll be this color here. We've then got the unicorn logo, which is going to be its own transparent image. We've then got the unicorn, the sun. The text we don't need to create and import. We can actually create the text itself in the web designer, so I'll show you how to do that shortly. We need to create a call to action button, and then at the end of this tutorial I'll show you how to actually make that an active button as well, because what we need to do is import it as an image first and then add some functionality that allows that to be a call to action button. So let's get back into the builder and get importing these images. So you've created the static, you've created all those images in separate files. All you need to do then is actually import them. So you go to File, choose Import Assets, and then choose the assets that you're importing. So we've got them there. So we've got all our images, we're now going to open them all. It takes a little bit of time, but then what it does is it drags them all in. It doesn't look anything like that image that we want it to look like, it's just basically stuck them one on top of the other. Now you'll see in this timeline here, they've come in with GWD image, and what this is the code that it uses as part of the HTML programming, because all these ads you're going to be creating in this are in HTML. And you can actually view that code by clicking on code view here. So there's a lot of the CSS there, you've got stylings, you've basically got a full HTML document, which we don't need to know anything about. We don't need to know how to code to get these to work. It's just there if you did want to have a look. So the first thing, what we're going to do is we're going to actually turn all these images off. And that's just as easy as clicking on Hide Layers. So we've hidden all those layers because this background needs to be a different colour. So we're going to choose that background. And we're then going to start looking at Properties and Not Components, so we can collapse those at the moment. So we'll just drag that down so you can see a little bit more what we're doing. So at the moment we've got properties. So we've got the page, that's its ID, so it's page number 1, that's absolutely fine, we don't need to change that. We could call it background if we wanted to. We've got the size, which is the size of the advert we're looking at. We've then got a page fill option, and this is what we need to change here, because at the moment it's white, which is the hex code and the colour you can see in this here. Now we do already have a hex code that we used as part of the guidelines for this fictional brand. You'll obviously have your own. If not, you can just sort of drag and drop and pick your colours from the colour picker as well. But for our purposes, we've got this hex code here, which is that greeny bluey sort of colour that we had there. So that's actually already done and dusted now. So what we need to do, again, like any other software you use, what I'd recommend is saving it every now and again as you go along as well, just in case your browser crashes or anything like that. So we've got the background in, and what we need to do is actually, because these codes don't mean much to us, we have no idea what these are unless we turn them back on. So what we're going to do is actually choose each one. We're going to go to its ID, and we're going to give it a name that actually means something. So that's unicorn. And now we'll turn that off, we'll come back to this, and this is the sun, obviously, so we need to just for making sense later on. And we're going to this one, and that's the logo. And you'll see why I'm doing this when we get to the animation piece in particular, because it can get quite complicated. And we'll call that Hills 1. And we'll call that Hills 2. And we go on to the next one, Hills 3. You can see this could take a little bit of time if you've got a lot of images as well. And last but not least, the call to action button. And we'll just call that buy now. And there we have it. So we've got the names now. So if we need to turn on a particular image, we can just go to it and we know exactly what we're turning on and what we're turning off. Again, as I say, that's going to make sense when we get to the animations. For now, though, if we turn these images back on, we've got a right mesh, so we need to get this looking like that final static image. And if we go back to it, it's that image there that we need it to look like. So let's get back into the builder and start getting this lot in some sort of order. So we'll get this unicorn moved, and it's a case of hovering over, make sure that the selection tool's chosen, and then drag and drop it to where you think it needs to go. So around that sort of area there. Now it doesn't matter if this is off the edge of the advert slightly, because if you look at that original image we've got, it does cut it off and we don't need to see the back end of that image anyway. And then we need to go and move the sun into its final position. Now to make sure things are aligned, you can actually start leaving some of the images active, so that you can make sure everything's lined up. Because again, with the logo, we need to make sure that that logo is sort of lined up where it needs to be there. We've then got some hills. So these hills are actually 3 layers just because they're different colours. So we'll get that where it needs to be there. We've got another hill section here going over the top of that. And the final one goes in front of that. Now as you can see, that's actually gone behind. So what we need to do here is just get it lined up, and then we've got some options at the top here if we hover over, so we can bring that forward, and there we go, we've got that nicely lined up. And the last thing we need to put in place is the buy now button, and again that's done exactly the same thing, so drop it roughly where we think it needs to be, and that needs to be definitely at the front. So we've turned all these images back on now, and we can preview that. So if we click on preview, what it'll do is it'll actually take us through to our browser, and we can see the image we've got. Now all's looking good so far, but we are missing those 2 lines of text here, which you can see in that image there. So solutions that work for you. Now because we're going to animate these separately, I'm going to create 2 text boxes for solutions that and then work for you. And what I'll do is when I animate them, I'll bring them in from this side here. So we need 2 boxes, 1 solutions that and 1 work for you. So let's go get those created. So again, we'll turn all the images off because we don't need them on for now, but we'll just turn logo back on because we need that text to sort of fit under here. And we choose the text tool. And it's just like using any other sort of word processing document to a degree here. So we choose the text box, give it a size, and then put the text in. Now at the moment it's not the right size, it's not the right font, it's not the right colour, so we need to get that changed. So we highlight the text just as you would do in Word. For this purposes we're going to use Arial. You can choose any of the web-safe fonts that come up, or you can choose more fonts, and it'll actually let you choose from the Google fonts, hundreds of those on Google Fonts as well. So for us it's going to be Arial. We then need to change the size. Now this is going to be a bit of trial and error, but for our purposes we're going to use a size 22, and we don't want black text, we want white to match with that. So again, you can either put the hex code in if you've got a specific colour, or you can use the drag and drop picker. So we've got white, and that's done and dusted. So that's our first one done. We'll just change the size of that text box ever so slightly, and then what we need to do is create another text box. So again, it's just as easy as clicking on, choose the size of the box you want, and then we need to put that other text in, and that's going to be work for you. That's come through in the right format. So what we need to do is just get these lined up now. So we'll use the select tool to do that. So we've got the text coming in there, we've got this lined up there, and we'll just move it a little bit closer with the cursor buttons, and let's turn everything back on and preview that. As you can see now, we'll just get rid of that old one. It's looking kind of okay. The solutions that work for you needs moving up a little bit, but other than that, the static's nearly as perfect as we need it to be for this purpose. So let's just get those text boxes moved up a little bit. So we just drag and drop. I'll just pick the top one first. And if you need to see the alignment, we'll just get that in line there. Just move it up a little bit there, and we're all sorted. So we'll save that as we are there, and we can just get everything back up on screen there. So we've now got everything where we need it to be. We're all looking good, but now we need to add the animations, because a static image is no good as a display network ad if we're actually setting off to create an animated ad. So we need to consider how these animations are going to work. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, what I'm going to do with the animations here is the unicorn and sun are going to come up from the bottom here. The unicorn logo is actually going to start around this section of the screen, and it's going to be completely transparent. It's going to move up to its final position and then become the full image there. The text boxes are going to come in from the side in a slightly staggered way, and then the buy now button is going to move up from the bottom itself as well. We can also animate these separate images on the background here, but to save time I won't do that on this tutorial, but you could imagine that we could also animate these in slightly differently as well at different times, just to graduate things up. Now, if you've not used animation before, there is a term that I'll use which is called keyframes, and that's something that basically animation software uses to know where a start position is and maybe a colour, and then the end position and what happens in between those times. So for the unicorn and the sun, as I say, we're going to move them up from off the screen onto the screen. So to do that, what we'll do is we'll turn all the layers off for now, apart from the unicorn, and we'll do that unicorn first. So just scroll that just down a little bit out of the way, just so you can see what I'm doing. And what we need to do is, this is going to be the first animation anyway, we need to go down to that unicorn, and we need to choose a point in time. As you can see, this timeline, we've got it numbered in seconds, so we'll say from maybe 1.5 seconds here. So we right click and make sure we're highlighting that particular image or asset. We insert keyframe. So now we've got a start position and an end position. We know this is where we want it to end, but we need to choose where it's going to start. So what we do is we choose the start. We'll then hold the shift key and then drag this off screen. Now the reason I'm using the shift key is so that it keeps it in line and we don't use any funny angles or anything like that. So that's the first position. We then need to make sure that's highlighted, so that's chosen that as a position. Now I did mention before on the logo that we're going to make it come in as a transparent. I'll show you how to do that when we get to that position there though. So the final is going to be back up around this section here, and you can see we've now got a line, so from the start to the end, and if we scroll back through and scrub back through that, you can see it moves. And if you want to see at any point how your animations are working, just choose that option there. So that's brilliant. So now we need to do the same with the sun, because again we want the sun to do a similar thing. So just scroll back up to choose that, and the sun's here. So again we choose around the same time because we want them to land and finish at about the same time. So we insert a keyframe, we choose the start, we'll drag it down off the screen using that shift key so we don't go off kilter. So that's its start. We now go to end, and we move it up. Now what we might need to do is also include that unicorn so we can get that lined up again. As you can see, we don't want to do that, but we do want to move it up slightly. We need the middle around that part there. So we'll get rid of that unicorn again. We'll hold the shift key, drag that up a little bit more, and I think we're probably near on there, so that's absolutely fine for us. And we've got the line again, so if we scrub back through, show the two, you can see that they both come zooming in at the same time. It's absolutely brilliant. So now what we'll do is we'll move on to the unicorn logo. As I mentioned, this is going to move up from about here-ish up to this final position, and it's going to go from transparent to the full image. So we can get rid of those if we need to, so they're not confusing us. So again, we need to hover over, and we need to give it an end, but also we need to consider that this is going to happen after the unicorn and the sun. So we'll insert the keyframe a little bit later on. We'll move its start position to here for now, and we also want to move it down a little bit and change its transparency, and that is under properties. So if you go back under properties again, we can choose the fill option, and if we hover over that, it'll choose an opacity level. So at 1 it's the full image, and as we scroll down you can see it goes to 0 and you can't see it, and that's the state that we want it to be in at the start. So we've chosen that. Now what we want to do is move it up to where it needed to be before, and then give it that opacity level of 1. So we choose that, we can see it, we just need to move it up a little bit. We'll add the unicorn back in so we can get it lined up where it needs to be. And as you can see, we've got that animation in. So if we add the unicorn, the sun and the logo now, you'll see what happens. So the animation comes in and then the unicorn comes up. So now we need to get this text coming in, the two text boxes. So for now we'll keep the logo on, we'll turn the sun and the unicorn off, and we'll add these two back in so we can now see what we're doing with those. And again, all we need to do first of all is the solutions. That again, we're going to move these in a little bit later on, so we'll move across, add the keyframe using that right option, drag the start of this across because we need that to come in just around the time that that ends. We need to choose its start position, so we drag that across, off the screen, select that, and then we go to the end position and we'll drag it back and line it up. And now we've got the line. We'll do the same for the works for you, and we want that to come in again a little bit after that initial solutions, that section, so that'll come in around there. We need to choose its start position, which is off the screen, and then we'll move it across to its end position. That's lined up. And then we do the final one, which is the Buy Now button. There it is. And again, we want to make that come in a little bit after the rest. And we want it to start as that last bit of text comes in. So we choose the keyframe. Oh, we've added the wrong one there. We're in that section there. Always make sure you're highlighting the right one. We'll just move the start position across to where that ends. We then need to move it down because it's going to come up. Select that, and then we're there. We go to the end position, move it to where we need it to be. We've got that line. Now we've got all our animations working. So if we just preview that now, we've actually got a functioning advert, and it's just that easy to animate them. Obviously it takes a little bit of time to get used to how that works, but that's the basic animation in place. At the moment this call to action button's not active, so we just need to add that in, And that again is just as easy as choosing the Buy Now button. Again, this is why I named them, because then it makes sense as to what's what. We choose that, and then what we need to do is go under Components. So for now, we'll just collapse the properties. We choose Components. Now there's a lot of different components you can add to your animations. So you can add things like maps, street views, audio, video, YouTube. There's some gestures, so if somebody hovers over an image it might change or do something, the image button itself, or a tap area. And that's what we need for this call to action button. So all we need to do is select it and then just drag it over and drop it over that. And as you can see, we've now got an area, but it's not just covering the button, it's covering that whole area there. What we need to do is just change the size of that, and that's as easy as going back to properties and then changing the size, which is at the top, and we'll just drag it across to get those so it's just purely over the call to action button. And that's that section done. Now at the moment it's just an area that you can click, it's not going to do anything, so we just need to add a link into that. So we right click on that, add an event, and then we've got some extra options here. As you can see, there's a 5-stage process to configure this. It's a tap area because we've just dragged it across, tap area. It's going to be a touch or click, obviously, because we need them to touch it or click on it. Ignore the top two and the bottom two for this purpose. You need to go into Google Ad and then exit ad, and then accept that receiver. You don't need to know what that code does. Now the reason we chose exit ad is because when the person clicks on this buy now button, they're going to be taken somewhere else away from the ad. So they're going to exit it and go to somewhere else. And this is where we set that setting. So we'll set it to the Marketology homepage. We've got a metrics ID, so we need an ID for the analytics side of things, obviously, because we're using AdWords. So what we'll call this is display ad and unicorn. You'd obviously give it your own naming convention. Now you can choose to collapse the advert on exit or pause media on exit as well. Neither are relevant to us for this ad, but we'll leave them as they are anyway. We click on OK. Now we'll save that before we do anything else, because actually our ad is now set up and prepared to roll. So if we run that through, the advert's working absolutely fine. We've also got a cursor and then the touch area, and if we click on that, we go through to the MyMarketology.com website, just as we set the settings up there. So we're done, and basically that is our ad set up and ready to roll. All we need to do now is export that and put it into our Google AdWords account. So as you've seen, Google Web Designer is a great tool for creating animated ads quickly and easily. It does an awful lot more than what I've just shown you, so get experimenting and see what you can create with it. You can share your creations by leaving a link in the comments below for us as well. I hope this video has given you a little bit of more confidence to go out and build your own animated ads. I'm not a graphic designer by any means, but with a little bit of experimentation, a little bit of playing around with it and seeing what things does, we've managed to create a reasonable animated ad there. Now we're always open to any questions that you might have or suggestions for future topics for the labs. You can contact us through the usual social channels or by emailing us at hello@mymarketology.com. Now don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our future labs. I'd just like to say thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.